Yeah, what's
Just,
that,
I
Farah,
just have
huh?
to. I have to hit so many buttons. There's so many buttons I have to
Uh-huh.
hit.
Perfect. Oh, there we are. All waved in, all cameras looking good. Pets for right now, also quiet and looking good. That's great. Well, welcome everyone. Happy Tuesday out there. Beau and I are back to our regularly scheduled stream on Tuesdays to again talk about game design, games, bring on cool guests. And we have a brand new guest to kind of present to you today and to talk about board games and some other cool topics. Okay, Farah, can't even let me do my intro. Cool. We'll go over there. Um, but I think so. We're really excited to have Justin join us today. As you can kind of see from the title screen, we're going to be talking about Biome Borneo, which is a brand new Kickstarter game that just launched today. And we'll be kind of talking a little bit more about it, dropping the Kickstarter links and such into the chat. But I think just to kick things off, Justin, how about kind of introduce yourself and maybe how you kind of got into a game design here? All right, and if technical troubles, we'll just we'll wait it out. Here we go.
He's back. Uh,
Sorry.
no, you're fine. It's
No,
fine.
it's okay. It's okay.
Blame the internet. It's fine. That's what we do all the time.
Absolutely. What was the first? Did I miss a question? Let me ask with that.
Oh,
Start with that.
mostly just to introduce yourself.
Oh, there we go. Perfect. Yeah. I'm Justin. I'm one of the co-creators of Biome Borneo. So my partners in this are David Polito. He's the other co-creator, and then our I'll call her our CMO, our our marketing director is Sierra, and yeah. So we are. Let me see. We just launched our game on Kickstarter early this morning. Early meaning 9 a.m. That's early for us. Yeah. Obviously, being a small company, I mean, you're looking at the three of us. I think that we truly embody the term indie game. I don't think it gets more indie. Um, that said, I really like our team. Sierra has done some phenomenal work with the graphics, and it's not just us. We also, have had a illustrator, Missy Ames, who is a travel. She does travel art by more of her background, but she did an amazing job with all of our artwork. And then just a lot of effort, but we,
Yeah,
we
you got
love
a
what we
great
do.
team. Yeah, a super great team, and we'll kind of get more into kind of what collaborations you did in addition to these team members you mentioned, but kind of with how you came up with this game, the name, what it focuses on also. Because there's quite an interesting story behind it and kind of how for example, why Borneo plays a role in this game and in the theme. So yeah, it's so nice to have you on here, Justin. This
Thank you
is
so much.
we kind of talked a little bit earlier. This is my first time meeting you, which is great. But you were able to run into Beau, I think, probably a month ago at this point. What was that? Mock's boarding house.
Mm-hmm.
That is
Yep.
correct.
Sweet. And were you were testing out Biome Borneo then? Is that correct?
Exactly. Yep. And I also just wanted to actually get to know you guys because I had heard so much about Playtest Northwest, and that was my first actual event that you guys had put on. Um, so it was fun to be able to also be at Mox, which is obviously such an icon in Seattle.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you for making the trip. I know that when we got into talking a little bit earlier, you're kind of a little bit more up north from us, and so we're slowly kind of extending the amount of events and stuff we have. We used to have a lot more. Obviously, with pandemic and restrictions there, a lot of our in-person events were kind of put on pause for a long time. And it's only really in August that we kind of started up the in-person events again, and so it's slow moving, but as people are becoming more vaccinated and comfortable, and we are starting to see a lot more of these in-person events. And we do have one actually kind of coming up north. I'll give a quick shout out before we get dive into a little bit more. But we have a new event over in Lake Stevens that will be starting. The first event is this coming Tuesday, November 23rd at 6 p.m. over at Games Plus. So if you're in the Lake Stevens area or are near kind of up north, please check this event out. We have plenty of space for game designers to come, bring their games, play test their games, meet other designers. Our host Sathian of Indie Pro is going to be running the event. If you were at Dragonflight recently or have been to some of our events in the past, Indie Pro that Sathian runs is a local distributor of mostly indie games, kind of the Pacific Northwest, and so he's a really awesome collaborator and guy who kind of goes around and helps get local games by local designers into game stores. So great guy, great company, and an awesome new playtesting event coming to the north. I was gonna say North Seattle, not North Seattle, way outside of Seattle.
A little bit further north.
little bit further north, So yeah, and actually, speaking of kind of up north and adventures and stuff, oh, thank you, Beau, for showing it. All of our events are obviously on meetup.com/playtestnorthwest. Yeah, it's all the way up there, kind of in the Everett, a little bit outside of Everett, a little bit more north there. But it's spreading around.
Yeah.
But yeah, speaking of kind of north, being kind of outside of the city and things like that, I kind of want to hit on a little bit of a story that you were telling us before we went live, Justin, about how your company name kind of came to be. So you said Biome Borneo is your first kind of adventure as a board game company, but the name, is it Goat Rock Games?
That is
Is that, I have
correct.
that
Goat
correct?
Rock Games. Yep.
Kind of has an interesting story as to how that name came to be. Do you mind elaborating on how that came about?
No, not at all. I get so used to talking about Biome that I, forget that we're actually a company too. and anyway, so David Polito and I, over the years we developed we had a tradition of every summer we would go out camping someplace. And I was telling Nicole and Beau that our favorite place has to be the Goat Rocks Wilderness, and that's here in the Cascades. Some of our best adventures had happened out there. And in fact, when we were first thinking about, what would be the appropriate name for a game company, given that, honestly, we're new to this whole process, is we cycled through so many different names, but the only thing that really caught was Goat Rocks. And, part of that reason is, I think, one of our funniest adventures out there. Oh man, I remember. Sorry, I'm going to go off tangent just for a second. I remember, you can buy like Rainier cherries for about $5, an entire bag. And I remember after one of our hiking trips, we just sat there snacking on that the whole time. And anyways, that night just became explosive in every single way. I don't know why I'm telling that story. But when you're out camping, it's just that there's so many things that can go absolutely wrong while you're out there. And even what I was telling you guys is, even on one of our trips, we got trapped by a lakeside, and we had to make a raft using our belts, kicking across a glacier, basically a freezing cold lake. The sun was setting. I think David got hypothermia, and so when we were trying to come up with a name, we're like, I can't think of anything quite that adventurous, to be quite honest with you. And I don't think our journey has failed to disappoint. I can honestly say, as somebody that is coming in, I don't have any experience really launching a game before. This really is a lot of new experiences. But I think that's honestly partly what has made our game so fantastic, to be honest with you.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that is a wonderful story on how that came about. And like you said, yeah, it's a brand new adventure, kind of running a game company and like you said, going to Kickstarter with your first game and kind of finding I guess the ropes, or going through the ropes of what it means to kind of do all those things to get a game published and such. So like you said, it may not be actually paddling across a glacial lake, but it definitely has its challenges. Perfect. Well, so yes, so I just put it in chat also, but if anyone watching has any questions for Justin and his team about Biome Borneo, about Goat Rock Games, about this first adventure into kind of designing and publishing a board game, please share them in chat. We'll also get a little bit more into some of the things that they mentioned on their Kickstarter. So we'll share that in chat here, where some of the things that we were talking about earlier, you're looking to have kind of like an environmentally sustainable like sourcing of some of the components, looking into things about domestic manufacturing, or at least a building of your game. And so we'll get into that as well. So if you have any questions related to those topics also, feel free to post them in chat. I just shared their Kickstarter campaign, so please go check it out. Support them if you can. Share it with your friends. You bet. Because what's it's not uncommon actually that we've met a lot of game designers that kind of have a focus in I guess kind of like nature and the environment, and just kind of like the beauty of it that we have kind of around the Pacific Northwest. You're not alone there. We know some other game companies that have made games based on the kind of natural world around them. Cascadia comes to mind immediately. Because it also focuses on kind of the environment and the animals and ecosystems around. We had a person that we knew that their company was Great Heron Games, kind of inspired by some of the local wildlife around here. And so it's it's a common thing. I think a lot of times board game designers and people in this area are drawn to the natural world around them. And we have a chat question in here from chat, which actually was going to be kind of my lead-in question for you. So thank you, Hacking Flash, for your question. But they wanted to know kind of what was your inspiration for Biome Borneo? How did that come about?
Yeah. So Biome Borneo, it really was a pandemic game. And so, unfortunately, I had the benefit of living actually right next to my family, so in a sense we were kind of contained all in one space. And to be honest with you, I'm not somebody that grew up in love with board games. This is actually something that came up, I would say, actually through this experience. We started just kicking around the idea of a board game, and we were really drawn to the idea of interspecific competition. So I studied biology, feels like back in a different life. And so I already had a natural draw that way. And at one point, we took our journey to the rainforest, like the Amazonian rainforest, and I was trying to make like toucans fly around, lay eggs in like a 3D game. And there were so many elements that were building on each other. We thought we were going somewhere, but they all played so horribly. It's so interesting how you can have such a brilliant idea in your head, but then the moment you show this to people, you're just ready to just melt. Anyway, I think there was a real pivotal moment for us when we knew we wanted to be in nature. So I'm going to try and focus on your question. We knew we wanted to be in nature, but it was a question of how do we do this effectively. And I think the moment that I remember I was taking a shower and just sitting there and frustrated, banging my head against a wall. And I remember thinking, I'm like, we focus a lot on the animals, but what about the plants? And I don't know what happened, but something just unlocked there. And it was this realization that I don't have to pick my animals anymore. In fact, I'm focusing on the wrong thing. If you work from the bottom up with the rainforest, you get it all. And so that actually put our that put our perspective instead focusing on rainforest layers. And we're like, okay, what plants exist in what layers? And then, how can we maybe even like use these plants to then unlock animals? And then I don't have to choose which animals I have to choose. And instead, we build an entire ecosystem. And so that's sort of what became a driving thought. And I'd say that, Borneo as a rainforest, David's the one who actually brought it to us, but it was almost an instant click. Because when we were looking at it, it's an isolated island. It has the world's oldest rainforest. And I wouldn't have known this except that now, we're partnered with Project Borneo. They have 80% of their rainforest has been deforested. It's absolutely shocking. And again, the Amazon has huge problems, but I noticed this is the corner of the world that got tucked away, and I know that there's tremendous need in there. It's an absolutely the animals and the flora, everything is absolutely unique, and you will not find this in anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, that's amazing. You know, we had kind of you have the story so well laid out on your Kickstarter page as well. And that's, you know, one of the main reasons we wanted to talk to you, and why this game kind of you know, really stuck out in our minds, is because you know, obviously it is a game. It does capture, like you mentioned, kind of building these biomes, building these ecosystems for all the and recognizing all the great flora and fauna. But it also is kind of rooted in this idea of trying to get people to know about the flora and fauna of this ecosystem that, you know, is kind of, I wouldn't say on its way out, but you know, it is definitely threatened.
Yeah,
And you know, trying to call attention to that, I think, is also a very strong point of this campaign and of the game that you've made.
definitely.
How did you kind of, you mentioned that it was your partner David who had maybe more of the experience with Borneo, or did you all kind of as a team get inspired by the location and the island itself?
Yeah, we totally had a very superficial understanding right from the get-go. It was more like we were like looking at rainforest and we're like, man, this Borneo looks super interesting. And for us, it was really a process of discovering Borneo. And in fact, I don't think it really sank in until, you know, at one point we're like, you know, we feel like, you know, making this game is important, but you know, we see potential for a whole lot more than just even a board game. And that's when we reached out to Project Borneo, and you know, shockingly, they were actually willing to partner with us. And they're an organization that, you know, they have their own set of challenges. COVID has not been easy on them either, and I could talk about that for days. Um,
Hmm.
but sorry, I don't know if that really answers your question, but
Yeah, no, you did. And one of the things I was wondering too is just kind of the, I don't know how to phrase that, but I do find it very interesting that you're working with Project Borneo, because it sounds like they're like what exactly does their organization specifically do for Borneo?
yeah, they've been there for a really long time. Their focus has started out with animal rehabilitation, and then they began to notice that, you know, basically that the people living in Borneo are a huge part of how conservation has to work. And so they actually moved on. They still take care of animals. I mean, that's sort of like their bread and butter, but they've moved now into conservation work, and they've also even worked into trying to create some form of sustainable business. And in fact, one
Hmm.
thing I loved about them, and we were very choosy about who we ended up working with. Not that they're, you know, we found really any terrible examples, but they were one of the few NGOs I noticed that was trying to be self-sustainable. They were running their own restaurants, bars. All of that had to close over COVID, and you
Hmm.
know, some of the downstream effects of this happening. Unfortunately, a lot of people who normally were employed had to go back to their village, and unfortunately, go back into, like, you know, hunting animals, which then, you know, put more animals on the doorstep. Um,
Hmm.
and so, you know, even talking with the CEO, what we began to learn is that just the budget to keep this place running is astronomical, and they're doing it at, you know, less than half of the staff. I think even, you know, some of the staff are working 2 or 3 different jobs just to try and keep this place afloat. Um,
Hmm.
and they really do seem like one of the last, you know, one of the last NGOs that are putting their flag in the ground and still trying to hold ground over there. And so I think, you know, we grew very inspired to help them in any way that we possibly could. And it felt a little bit kind of like walking in and we're like, hey, we're a little board game design company. Like, I don't know how I can really help you. Um, but you know, the more I started talking with them, I realized that a huge part of it for them is just understanding, you know, the awareness of what's happening there.
Hmm.
And so
Yeah, just trying
that's
to get
part
the
of that.
message out.
Exactly. Yep.
Hmm. Yeah, well, that's great work. And for those people that don't know, you know, it's listed on the Kickstarter site as well, that a portion of the proceeds of this game will get donated to Project Borneo here to help with their conservation effort. So, you know, not only are you kind of going through the experience and learning about the ecosystem of Borneo itself, but you're also by supporting this game and this project doing a little part in order to actually help kind of sustain the rainforest over there, and the or not company, the nonprofit that's there kind of helping with that conservation effort. So you know, it can stick around. The forest or the rainforest and such can stick around. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
One thing I
Bo
wanted to
has the
mention
map up
really
here too.
quick is it's
Yeah. Go
so
for it.
we never actually, we didn't create this game originally to honestly be a conservation game or to even be a
Hmm.
science education tool. And the reason why I mentioned that is we really wanted to create a good game first and foremost. And
Hmm.
really a lot of things that developed around this game really came from us exploring mechanics. It came from us really digging in, making mistakes. It was messy. The whole process was really just feeling like we're going somewhere where we have no idea where we're going. And
Hmm.
really just along the way, almost stopping and smelling the roses and going, oh, this would be a really great opportunity to talk to Project Borneo. And then it would develop an arm. And so it almost felt like as we created this game, it was almost a living organism in and of itself. Maybe this is every game creator's like experience creating a game. I have no idea. But for us, it's really been about the journey. And you guys were asking about what led to local manufacturing and our pursuit to do that. The answer is it's a natural extension of what we've already been doing. We have no idea what we're doing, except that except that we saw an opportunity and we started to chase it down. And then we found that when you do something and you put yourself on the edge, people are drawn to that, and they really do. They come out of the woodwork to help. And that's a crazy thing. I've never had so much support in my life for such absolutely ridiculous ideas.
Yeah. You're like
Honestly.
my board game, this idea that I've had with friends, we're trying it out for the first time,
Right.
and then, you just get like such support and reception for it. I will say that is something that we usually hear a lot about, when
Awesome.
people have a really good game and a really good, I would say, mission behind it. And I wouldn't say that there's a lot of game designers who have this particular collaboration and focus, for with Project Borneo that you have. That
Yeah.
I don't think other games have necessarily had that as their guiding light, but it's it definitely, like you said, helps the process, and like you said, almost feels natural, um, as you kind of find your way and take this journey. So that's really inspiring in itself to hear.
Yeah. And one thing I would pass along to anyone watching this, and if you're at a place where you're like, I'm hitting every roadblock trying to design my game, trying to get it launched, because it's really weird times. And maybe it's actually better that I didn't know what I was getting into, so that I wouldn't be disappointed when I hit every stupid roadblock along the way. It's like I reach out to manufacturers and I'm like, are you going to get back to me in a month? Or like, what's the plan? You know what I mean? We just
Uh-huh.
decided that we just wouldn't take no for an answer. And, if it was in our means, we would just figure out a different way to do things. Let me give you an example. One person that we've been
Hmm.
connecting with talking about partnerships. And this is something I can speak to because that's a role I've been taking on more and more. And like any team, you find yourself gravitating towards a particular thing, right?
Hmm.
Um, we've been talking outfit based out of Ballard that's called Net Your Problem, that's doing fascinating work with recycled plastics from fishing net that have been abandoned throughout Alaska, all over the world. And so, a project that we've been working together, and if we can get to about 10,000 games, that would allow us to unlock the possibility of making our games out of fishing net, which is
Oh.
phenomenal. And I also partnered with the Makerspace, based out of South Everett. It's just a bunch of board engineers. Like you couldn't like make this stuff up. They're love to help you. It's crazy. And I just remember
Hmm.
talking with someone. They're like, "Hey, have you thought about maybe making a mold?" And so I just from a contact here through there, they're already like, "I have a quote. I'm ready to basically speed along making a soft steel mold to be able to injection mold games out of. I have the sourcing. I have endless plastic from BC that I can use. And not only that, but now I've talked with Select and Everett, which is a plastics manufacturing, and they've already completed the circuit. So I have an entire plan ready if we can get our game to sufficient size, which is an
That's
absolutely fascinating thing. And
awesome.
it's hyper local. And I love the fact that we're pulling fishing net out of the ocean. I mean, I think that this is like 3013 type thinking. I don't know. I just picked a random year, but
It's a good year.
Yeah,
but we're really
I think I'd
excited
agree
about
with you
that.
there.
That
And
Yeah,
is
then
I think I
insane.
and just to add to that, I mean, one thing again, this thing has been a journey, and I'm not kidding you. Maybe we're taking off more than we can chew because we still have to nail a Kickstarter, but we're looking into making our game boards out of mycelium technology, and I just happen to luck out that my I live on a farm where we sell scientific equipment. I have so many incubators around, and I remember just thinking like, well, we have the equipment. I have a brother-in-law who's a aficionado of growing mushrooms, and I know it can be done. And so I've just been watching help pile in and contacts around this. That there's some really fascinating ideas, and I really think this is what's unique about board games is we're not trying to make iPhones. We're just trying to make sometimes like the equivalent of a coffee, like just basically a beer coaster, right?
Yeah.
yeah,
If
it's
anyone
paper.
like if
It's
anyone
paper.
can do it, it's the board game industry, right? We don't have to ship our stuff across the ocean to get it to Todd's house next door.
Yeah.
It's
Like
true.
some of this just makes sense, and it's too bad that we're so locked into a particular way of doing it. So I think we're just trying to be different and break that mold and do things that just make sense, and not just do it for doing its sake, but it really just makes sense. Like chipboard prices are going up, cardboard's going up. I'm like, that's fine. Why are we calling this the end of end? There's a lot of other materials that we're not using that are you can grow a game. Why not?
That's insane.
Yeah. That
The
is, yeah, I think was it, what was it? It was like 3,300, like year 3,300 thinking.
Yeah.
I would agree. I would agree. Go for go for it, Bo. You have some thoughts on mycelium? I'm
Yeah,
very
what
curious
is it?
about
What is it?
Yeah, so
mushrooms.
Well, I know
there's a
it's from a
lot of different
mushroom, but
Okay.
I wouldn't
Sorry.
know this except my brother-in-law talks my ear off about it. Anyone who's a mushroom grower, it's like CrossFit. They can't stop talking about it. But it's wonderful because I think it's going to be the future, to be completely honest with you. There are a lot of different mushroom types, and they all have different growing properties. The one that we're looking at is called a reishi mushroom. It can basically approximate the density of wood. Now it does have specific growing conditions, meaning it has to rely on sort of a dry wood. You have to be careful with the pH, but this is the beauty. You can train this organism, which shares more DNA with us humans than other plants. You can train it to feed off of things like thrown away coffee. Can you think of a more natural, like, easy to get resource around here? I mean, I drink loads of it, so I could probably supply at least 15 games. I'm sure of it.
Uh-huh.
Um, and so, when we were looking into that, I'm like, what you essentially just need is you just need the right temperatures, and you need to essentially create a paper pulp or something similar. It's essentially just a fancy name for a thick smoothie, and from there you need molds. And again, these are things that can be made out of simple HDPE plastic, again going back to the plastic thing, which can be
Hmm.
easily molded. I'm just saying there's a huge opportunity here for a very circular economy, and it can start with board games. And I think it's something to be pumped about, to be totally honest with you. I find sometimes, like, I love making a board game, and I was obsessed as ever. Like I couldn't. I'll be at my job. Like, I won't tell you what I do, but I'd be sitting there thinking about my board game mechanics, right? But what I
Hmm.
found that if you're in the indie scene, you actually sometimes have a little bit more leeway than sometimes these companies that are locked into their ways. And so don't be afraid as an indie designer to go weird, because first of all, Portland will love you. Um, second of all, no one will tell you how you're supposed to do it. Therefore, there's no rules for you. Try something. Do it.
Yeah, that's great. I mean,
Yeah,
indie designers are starting from scratch. I think you put a good point there. You're starting from scratch, learning this process to begin with. Why not try some things that are a little bit, what would be unconventional, because you don't have those, established ways of doing things. Because you're
exactly.
right, all the other, international manufacturing costs of goods are going up. And so, one of the reasons we wanted to talk, bring you on here and talk about kind of what you found so far with, sustainable sourcing, local sourcing, different materials, is just because people are really at this point where they are wondering, especially indie designers who don't you don't go make board games to make money, really.
No,
Um,
no,
but
not worth it.
are exactly that have these questions come up about like, well, what can I do now in order to find other means to make a game?
Mhm.
And you're shooting out of the sky and saying like, well, we could grow games, we can make it out of these different
Yeah,
materials, we can partner with local organizations. Maker spaces are definitely things that we encourage, and I think
yeah,
unfortunately a lot of the ones I know immediately around me have closed, but you got to know they're opening up elsewhere because we do have a lot
Wallingford.
of
There was
yeah.
yeah, we
one
do
in
have a lot of
Seattle and
people
moved
here.
into Wallingford.
It's such a huge resource for game designers, and they love working with us because first of all, it's fascinating, it's doable. You know what I mean? These are things that are within
Hmm.
reach. And honestly, a great game that's where the money's at, right? It's actually not that hard usually to make what you need to make. But making a
Hmm.
great game is really the challenge, right? As you guys well
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
It is true.
So
It is true. So we've talked a lot. So we'll probably end up getting into more of this also. And if anyone in chat has questions about, I don't know, materials, we could probably talk about mycelium boards a lot.
yeah,
But we might as well talk a little bit more as to the gameplay of Biome Borneo, and kind of,
yeah,
you mentioned starting with a toucan game, it going horribly. I think Bo and I can relate that our first game ideas that you get out the door are not usually great, and that's kind of the
yep,
point. You kind of have to test
Yeah.
them into a direction of what it is that you want, and what is fun for people to
Yep.
play.
Yep.
But
yeah.
yeah. Do you want to let us give people out there kind of a little overview of what type of game is Biome Borneo? What can they expect to play?
Yeah, yeah. Again, so if I were to try and summarize it in a sentence, I would call it like a Euro-styled tile laying game. The purpose is to arrange rainforest native plants in unique combinations that create microhabitats that unlock animals and other things that are on playing cards, and you play for points.
Nice. And there's some 3D elements to it from what I've
There
seen of the
are.
boards. You're actually
Yep.
building those layers of a rainforest that you kind of had mentioned. Oh, great. Bo has it up on screen
Thank you
here.
kindly.
There we go.
Thank you so much. It's really nice to have someone, IT person, actually in the background.
That's
I know you
that's
know how to take care of business.
that's what I do. Yeah. Day and night.
Super pro.
So
Super pro.
they're essentially modular boards, and so one thing that's kind of fun, and I wish I could take credit for this idea. Fortunately, like I have good friends that can offer wonderful feedback during the test plays, but our rainforest is freely arrangeable, and there's going to be 7 unique platforms. You can basically reset the game to create a different topography at the start, and we notice that the game plays significantly different depending on how you set up your rainforest. We find that to be we've gotten excellent feedback about the replayability, not just for that reason, but that reason included.
Gotcha. Nice. Yeah, the modularness is always very nice to make a game replayable again and again, and especially one where you are trying to go for the most points. I feel like you have to disrupt what people kind of always go to for their strategy. You have to kind of like mess with that a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the tiles themselves, I'll see if maybe I can just pull up. I tried to bring some things with me, so I didn't come up completely empty-handed. But right now these prototypes are just built of wood. But as you can see, there is a height difference between these two games, or excuse me, between
Uh-huh.
these
I
two
see.
platforms. It's not so much that we still wanted to maintain a good visibility of the game. Like there still are advantages of a 2D game, but we found that at these particular heights, you're still able to see everything that you need to see. But it does give some dimensionality and depth. And we've gotten again, it is really nice because people don't want to spend their attention and time, right? Um, Trying to figure out what layer is which, and it's much easier if it's just easily differentiated. And so that's also a reason for just choosing very bold colors in this. The tiles themselves are a pure reflection of each of those layers, and I'll show you just some examples. And the thing that's fun is that um, all of the plants that pertain to that particular color, and I'll see if I can grab a rainforest layer here. Um, these are plants that would actually grow on this rainforest layer, and so this is going to be an understory layer, typically about 15 to 20 feet off the rainforest floor. A lot of the larger animals will live there, but what's interesting is that this area is mostly shaded from sunlight. As you can imagine, the canopy takes up about 95% of that in Borneo, but also in the Amazon. This is where my science background comes in a little handy.
Yeah, this is where you get the bugs. This is where you get
There we
the
go. There we go.
mushrooms and stuff.
And as you progress up, I mean, we even have tiles that can exist on different layers because obviously, like in real life, you'll have orchids that can exist on all layers. One of the coolest elements of our tiles has to be the vines. The vines play by a little bit of a different rule. So if I can try and illustrate an idea, that is that the tiles themselves. By the way, I created a how-to video last night until about like 3 in the morning. It's
Oh
very
boy.
hipster and fun. Hopefully I can put it up. I've been struggling with the video. I haven't video edited in years, but anyway, I know if you can see this, there are ability to match plants, and the way that if you're able to match plants, you're able to attain the resources of the tile you match into, and so that's a really unique element. If you're able to match a vine, for instance, you can see that there, and you match that up here. The fun thing is that vine can keep growing, and you get access to every tile that the vine is on. And so
Oh.
your resource pool for connecting into a vine it's a real big treasure, especially if you manage to expand that thing. And so what's interesting is that this game has a good learning component, and as you get more used to playing it, at the beginning of the game you're setting up opportunities for yourself, almost like for future version of you, several plays down the road. And
Yeah.
so what we do find is that when people first play this game, they usually end it feeling like, oh, I would do it differently next time. Yeah, and we find
Mhm.
that to be a really good point. The animals themselves, again, I got to keep giving props out to our illustrator who did a really amazing job. And again, we just got lucky that she did travel art, and so all of our cover, all of that design is a reflection of her. But let me even just show you some of it, and it's gorgeous. It's the only reason our game stands half a chance of going anywhere, is because she did such a beautiful job with it. And in fact, every animal, we've included a science fact about them. What is unique about these science facts is that a lot of them you really can't get elsewhere, except that we've had extended conversations with our partners in Borneo on the ground. Like, one thing you may not know, they love when they get volunteers, they love to send the young men to go out and void out in the rainforest, because one thing they don't realize is that attracts giant ants. There's such a scarcity of salt in the earth that it just feels like an Armageddon scene. They suddenly get swamped by these massive
Oh.
ants.
Wait, what?
Ooh.
Wait, what happened?
Yeah, well, they go out to go urinate, and
Oh.
it just draws these giant ants that are about like this big. I mean, apparently this just induces terror, but but they're completely harmless is the fun
No,
part.
but yeah, no, that would just be not the time that I would want like a giant swarm of ants that would
No,
just
no, no, not at all. So
Yeah,
of course
yeah,
they do not
exactly.
indulge in the fun, right?
you're like,
Cold. But anyway, these are the kind of things that we just we could never have known that, except except that we got a little bit of insider information. And that's another fun thing about partnering, is that really interesting combinations of things that you don't get elsewhere. Yeah.
that's
Mhm. Did you
So
have a lot
anyway,
of that back and forth, I guess, with either Project Borneo or just your game designer side versus your biology major side, I guess? Did you have to
yeah.
make decisions, I guess, between gameplay and maybe the conflicts of representing the biology?
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah.
You nailed on a perfect point. And I'll be honest, they introduced the idea of that having some of their Italian biologists review our game, and I started sweating bullets because I was like, you know, I don't know if
Uh-huh.
every relationship did not take a tiny bit of creative license, because you're 100% right. Nature, it does not fit cleanly onto a game board by any means. So what our statement is that we tried to keep it as close as we could to actual existing
Mhm.
relationships. We had to keep it functional. We still had to make a great game, because if you have a game that's super close to the science but isn't fun to play, I'm sorry, you failed. Bottom
Exactly.
line.
Exactly.
But then, what we found is our best message even if it was an uber sciencey game, is the goal is still to get people inspired to check out these places, to think about think about ecology and conservation. Um, and
Mm-hmm.
so, and one of our other angles is that this is a game we consider to be light, medium complexity, but really built for 12 and up. We didn't feel like we felt like it would be a mistake not to have a way for younger audiences to be involved. And so, we've been developing an expansion pack for 5 and up, based on very simplified gameplay. All you need is a separate deck of cards, and it's the same modular board,
Very
same
cool.
tiles. So that's something that we've also made available.
Nice, nice. Yeah, like you said, kind of expanding the audience because anyone at any age can learn a little bit more
Exactly.
about this place and about conservation. So that's great to hear. Very nice. Let's see. I'm trying to think. Maybe a little bit of a lighter question. Do you have like a favorite animal or plant that your illustrator created, or that just stuck out to you as far as a representative of Borneo?
Oh yeah, well the hibiscus plant always makes me pretty happy because it's the brightest thing on the board. I'll see if I can grab one. Um, and it's also just like the I think the state flower of Hawaii, but
Yep,
when
yep.
it connects, it makes me very happy, and I'm not sure why. And then obviously, the vines are pretty amazing because that really just sort of like it takes a different form every single game.
Yeah, it keeps growing and growing.
Yep, exactly. And
Perfect. Well,
and there's also
welcome.
good opportunities.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was
Sorry.
going to say there's also it is a competitive game, and I do want to make that clear because it has very light feeling to it when you play it, and we do hear that, but we still really like the competitive aspect, and we toyed around with a cooperative game, and we have some ideas for
Hmm.
solo player. We still haven't finished that idea yet, but the fun thing is almost like nature, how nature is extremely competitive, right? In the rainforest,
Hmm.
all these plants are trying to just capture the tiniest bit of light, right? I mean, a lot of their leaves are absolutely massive just for that reason, trying to like crowd out anything under it. And so this game has elements of you are building your own thing, but you can sabotage other people. Um, you, you also have an ability that we have disaster cards built in this thing. There's a sense of chaos at times. And again, all of this is
Just like
adjustable,
nature.
but we like the feeling that you know you play hard, but at the end, all of you can take a step back and look at your game board, and we think we created a real like piece of art that's unique at the end of every single game.
Very cool. Yes, it does look gorgeous. And for Bees or Miss, who just joined us, a longtime follower, also trying to, sorry, Farah, over there, over there. Also trying to coordinate dog off screen. Bees or Miss, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
They had mentioned they enjoy simplified rules if available. They've mentioned before that they play games with their kid, and it's always helpful when you can bring a younger player to the table, if you have these simplified rules, or if you have kind of like these beginner modes available. So that's great to hear about Biome Borneo kind of having those options in the future. But I also wanted to share, for those just joining in, also kind of what we're talking about. We're talking about the game that Justin is one of, a handful of people who kind of put this game together. It just launched on Kickstarter today. There's a lot of great things about it. We've been kind of going over, not only just the gameplay, but how it's connected to Borneo and kind of representative of the rainforest, the animals and the plants and stuff there, and also your partnership with Project Borneo, who is kind of leading the conservation effort over there.
Absolutely.
And Bo's
So
doing a great job kind of scrolling you through it so you can see a little bit more about it. We
Thank
just
you,
kind of
Bill.
talked a little bit about gameplay, which was awesome, and we look
oh
forward to actually playing it more.
well,
Oh,
not that one, not that one, not that one, that one. Um, there
there we go.
is on the screen. I just actually noticed. Yours is one of 6 new games on Tabletopia currently.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you are interested and you have Tabletopia, it is available there. And I also, right below it, is also one of my favorite games, so that was very exciting to see. And let's see if I can grab it. I know it's right here. I'm gonna get my hands on it. It's right there. I have my hands
A
on
lot of
it.
nature-based games here. So,
Yeah,
and you're
actually,
All
right at the
right,
top.
good company, right on.
yeah.
We gotta band together, seriously. Oh, that's
Octopus
beautiful.
Garden. Yeah, Octopus
That is
Garden
beautiful.
was a tile laying game, and it was the winner of the 2010 Canadian Game Design of the Year competition. So this game's been out for quite
I
a
can see
while.
why. That's gorgeous.
It is one of my
Yeah.
favorite games. I remember I worked at Wizards of the Coast. It was a big. Everyone was like, "You have to get this game. You have to find it," and it was impossible to find, but it's so good. So it's
to find it
also
on
on
Tabletopia.
Tabletopia. Yeah.
Actually, we'd like to take our next. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but we would like to take the next biome out to the coral reef. We're looking maybe at Egyptian Red Sea game.
Ooh.
Again, off the beaten track.
Ooh,
We like to pick places. Again, when we picked Borneo, we were actually a little nervous about it, to be honest with you. We felt at first that nobody's going to know what this place is, and it's going to hurt us. And I think in the end, we finally ended up just saying, whatever, like we feel like we're so
Eagle sight. We're
non-traditional. We
gonna
need
go
to
for
find
it.
a non-traditional place and go with it.
There's
Uh-huh.
animated clouds. I got to turn these off. But Borneo is right here on the map. So there's actually here. Hold on. Let me. Can
Yeah,
I?
go around Malaysia,
Okay.
around there.
Yeah. So it's right here. So Philippines, Vietnam, Cambodia, but it's like right here. That's where it's at. And I was like, yeah, where is Borneo? Like I should probably figure that out where that's at. So I loaded up Google Earth, and so but yeah, super green. And it's about the size of Washington, Oregon, and Idaho combined. It looks like so. Yeah, massive.
Pacific Northwest, similar sized. Love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
I was wondering if the biome colon Borneo meant that you had potential, ideas in the future of doing more biomes. So it's great to hear that that was intentional.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Very
Yep.
exciting. So another question I guess we have for people, ourselves included, is, so this is all very exciting. Kickstarter day one is today, so we're really excited to have you join us on day one of the Kickstarter, so we can help get the word out. But are there other places that you beyond Tabletopia that people can maybe play test the game or play it with you or any of your other crew, kind of as the campaign keeps going?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is that we're a small crew, and so we have it up on Tabletopia, and that's probably the easiest way that we have for you to get access to it. Um, but at least in the meantime, we love your support on Kickstarter, and if this is a game that even if you get a little bit, try it out. We'd just love to hear from you. Just period. That's one of the advantages of also being a small team is that if you do reach out to us, you will get us.
Yep. You are the man, one of the people behind the curtain, I guess, so to speak.
Very thin curtain, absolutely.
Yep.
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 And so we also
Barely
value
curtain.
your feedback, and honestly, even before we go to manufacture, we still take feedback. We still want to know how to make things better.
Hmm. Well, perfect. And I just posted the Tabletopia link on there, so players and playtesters can go on there and give the game a shot. Whether you can join on Hot Seat or grab some players, also to see it. So that's great. Actually, another shout out I should give is probably your website too, so people can also get signed up for your email newsletter and get
Awesome.
kind of gives
Much
kind of I've
appreciated.
been enjoying the newsletters I've been getting. I think a lot of times, you kind of sign up for a person's newsletter, and it's really difficult because when it's not, um I guess I just don't really get as many newsletters because I'm kind of horrible at writing them consistently. And so it's nice to actually get ones from people that are like, consistent, have a lot of really great information and pictures in there. And I
Oh,
think are
thank
just
you
kind of
for that.
a joy to read. So yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Let me find it here. But if there's any other kind of lingering questions, let's see. Oh, we may have one here.
A lot of our engagement is primarily on Instagram and then secondly on Facebook. But I would say we've kept our campaign. When when you're a smaller company, you really have to pick a platform and stick with it. If you have a marketing team, that's a completely different bird. Um, what I like to say is that
True.
we're
True.
very high functioning for being small, but we still have to pick our battles, and that's just sort of a natural limitation of where we're at.
Yeah, no, I definitely hear you there. It's too easy to get kind of drawn into like all the different social media places, and then kind of get spread too thin and not have too many updates. So I mean,
Exactly.
I'm
I just
guilty of
stopped.
that.
I stopped it on Facebook, to be honest. On my side, I'm just like, nah. It's up there
Yeah, yeah.
just in case if people are interested, but I'm like, just go to the website.
Okay, Sarah. Okay, you're getting so whiny. You're getting
Oh,
louder than Penguin.
I know. Oh, Penguin. Well, Penguin is when he's asleep. He's asleep. It's when he's.
So
Well,
I was going to bring back around something that we were talking about.
yeah,
I
please
was
do.
mentioning a lot of things around like, going into mycelium, looking at biomaterials, and then also looking at like, plastics. It may help give a little bit of context. One of the ideas that we are trying to do in this area that's a little bit different from conventional manufacturing is it's the idea of distributive manufacturing, and it's the idea that you don't have to have everything made in one place if you do everything hyper local. It's a very different bird. And so the typical ratios that people think about, like, oh, it needs to be a 5-to-1 ratio, from manufacturer price to retail. Some of those ratios do change depending on what your actual overhead is. So I don't know if this is something you've thought about, or if this is something you're finding yourself in. But part of our journey was, we started out just creating a game, and we really were hoping that eventually this could just get passed along to someone. But the more we started looking at our options, and we were like, you know what, we know what we're about, and we have very strong feelings about certain things. It became clear that if you want things done a certain way, sometimes you have to do them. And I think we
Hmm.
felt committed enough to this project that we're like, okay, we'll kind of just figure out the initial steps, and then we'll go from there. And then pretty soon you find yourself taking more and more and more on, and pretty soon you're like, wow, okay, I think we're kind of managing a lot of the initial manufacturing, until we can get to a certain point. Um,
Hmm.
and so anyway, if that's something, I don't know if that's something that game designers find themselves doing much, but that's something that I feel like we've been walking the walk on it, and I'm more than happy to answer anyone's questions if they want to reach out after this about any of these
Yeah,
things.
and just to clarify a little bit of kind of what you mean about getting it from different sources is basically like having, you kind of mentioned like if you have the game board built with this company out of this material over here,
Right.
they're doing the game board, and if you have people doing the company who makes recycled plastics out of nets, if they're doing those pieces, they're responsible for that part of the project, and then it kind of would all kind of come back to you or another person that kind of puts it all together. Is that kind of the what you're
Yeah,
describing?
you nailed it exactly. Yep. Instead of one house, it becomes like an ecosystem of different people who can do different things, and sometimes you have to
Yeah.
be the glue between them. But there's different ways of doing things. It's not just one way.
Yep, yep.
That's the
Sometimes
fun
you're
part.
just sorting those pieces, packing those orders, and I think
Yep.
people. I wouldn't say that's very common for a lot of game designers. I think a lot of times they will focus on having like one manufacturer to just to minimize all of the logistics and
For
stuff they would
sure,
have
for
to
sure.
handle.
And you
But
still
like you
have
said,
to, yeah.
yeah, you still have to. And like you said, I think hyper local, that thing that you mentioned is very key into kind of reducing the amount of ridiculous logistics that you're having to worry about. You're not
Exactly.
doing it on a large scale. If you're able to keep it all within a state, for example, that's a little bit more
Hmm.
manageable, even though it might be a lot more, there's more people that you're talking to, but at least you're not worrying about time zones, about being stuck at customs, about, all the other different, things that we don't even think about, like different regulations of importing and exporting things to different countries or something,
Yeah.
which is something I don't necessarily know about. I only hear about and know that like, ooh, that sounds like it would be a lot of work and a big pain for someone else. But the what you described, and being able to do it on kind of like a more indie design scale, I think is very is doable, as you're kind of proving. It's just
Yeah,
obviously, having to find all of the oh my gosh, how do you say that? All of the companies that kind of build those pieces to get them together.
totally. Well, one thing that may be of interest to you guys is, I mean, there are in sort of my search and looking for those manufacturers, there are a number, at least two that I know of that are interested in going back into games that historically had not been. Meaning, eons
Hmm.
ago, they used to manufacture games, and they've been seeing a pretty sharp rise in inquiries for board games, and they've been reconsidering getting back out there, which
Yeah.
would be a huge resource. Especially, I know that this area is such a hub for creating board games. Um, I think that's something that game designers would really want to know about. Because I think
Hmm.
historically there've only been a couple manufacturers in the U.S., and the more we can get out there, then the more flexibility I think that people will have.
Well,
Hmm.
we could make that a 2021 goal if you want, Bo. We've tried to do streaming kind of remotely from a different location. There is always the possibility of us looking into either like visiting these places, or making those connections and stuff,
Oh,
or
that's true.
talking with. So it could be really fun. We thought about it for doing it for local game stores and kind of doing tours that way, but it's a great way to
Nice.
kind of spread that information for
My
sure.
desktop is so huge. It's so heavy. No, I'm kidding.
Oh,
I'd have my laptop. We'd actually, I mean, I
we
was gonna
we
try
can
and do
figure it
stuff
out.
off of, I mean, you're doing stuff off your phone. I think we could definitely do it easily. And plus I could actually just remote into my computer from home and just like literally do what I'm doing now.
That's
I could
that's
do the
true.
logistics. I could figure it out.
Could be the I could be person on the ground. Um, but let's see that. Yes, that's great. That is super great. That yeah, happy you're happy to kind of share that information, that insight, because it is so new. And actually, we did get a flurry of questions
There's a big
here.
one.
Um,
Yeah.
we got a big one. I'm trying to parse through it, because there are some good things here. So thank you, Bees or Miss, for these questions.
I will.
Also, welcome Lackey. Welcome Lackey. Thank you for joining the stream also. So let's see. So there's a couple questions. I'll just start with the first one here. So Beezer Miss is asking, did you have to leave out any game item due to manufacturing in the U.S.?
Um,
Like, yeah. There you
yeah, let me. Absolutely. So originally, when I was originally I was trying to design a 3D game. I almost had a carousel like structure. I can't even tell you. I cut these things out of cardboard, and it was one of the most ornate things I have ever seen. And I remember, we had it on a rotating like a lazy Susan mechanism, and I was trying to figure out how we could manufacture this in mass. Which always designing something and thinking how you can make a million of it are two very very different questions. Um,
Yeah.
and actually that's partly why I decided some for part of it maybe one solution fits for this size of games and then one solution fits for this size, right? Not everything has to be the same tool for everything, but anyway, but yeah, what I quickly began to realize is like there's no chance in this world I'm going to be able to manufacture the game in the US with this level of complexity.
Gotcha. So I
But
had to
the
kind of
way that
tone
I
tone it
chose
back a little bit.
yeah, but the way I chose to see it is maybe this has become a philosophy that I've taken on and I've seen it in other places, and that is that you have kind of a burning passion in you to do something, and then there's the cold ice of reality, right? And when the two collide, you get really interesting products sometimes that are filled with passion, but they still have their feet on the ground. And that's what I really love about
Hmm.
this game is that there's elements of it that I love that I can take back to where they came from and dreaming about it. But it really is a very down to earth game.
Hmm.
All of its parts are easily manufacturable. I think we accomplish some complex ideas, and sometimes the most complex things are made simple. To be honest with you,
Hmm. Yep, and like you said, you're able to kind of like pivot, not just from what most designers go through, which is like their initial like if money in manufacturing wasn't a,
right?
a hurdle, what would I make? And then once you have to let the reality set in a little bit, you have to kind of like cut it back a little bit. But it seems
Exactly.
like you were able to kind of pivot to make it so you didn't necessarily have as many of these issues of like, well, I can't put meeples in this game. It's just like you can find
Right.
something else that works.
Mhm.
Because part two to this question here, let's see, because Beezermus was mostly asking if there were components kind of like meeples or other elements that are kind of difficult to find in the US. And if that was an experience that you had, that there were some other components or items that were maybe difficult to find domestically,
Yeah.
or I wasn't sure if there's other things. You hit on this a little bit, but was there other parts of the game that you kind of designed in mind, knowing that certain things were going to be kind of hard to source
Yeah.
domestically?
So probably the best example I can give you is our own board game and our modular boards that have varying heights or thicknesses. I can't
Mm-hmm.
find that anywhere, to be completely honest with you. And I don't know if even internationally, I know they could do it, but they'd have to invent systems as well. And so what kind of surprised me about U.S. manufacturing is really how limited they are, even compared to most other countries. They can do some basic stuff, which means that there's going to be a lot of constraints that you're going to have to put your game under. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I chose to see that as a way to continually keep honing my thought process and the way that I think about how a goal is accomplished. And I really have allowed that to refine my game, and I think it's actually produced a better game. That's the way that I've chosen to see it. You could probably see it a lot of different ways. Um, but and, even but you have to decide at the end of the day what things are non-negotiable, and we decided for us those modular platforms are not a negotiable point. And so we could have easily made this a flat game, but what we decided is I think that layered effect is so critical to the feeling of the game, the theme of the game, and also thinking ahead of future ones. And I'm like, I think I'm better off figuring out our own way to make them. And that's
Mm-hmm.
sort of what took us down that pathway, just that stubbornness to go, okay, what does it take to make a bunch of coffee coasters, essentially?
Yeah.
Because that's what they are, really, right? Just thicker ones.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
so,
that's great.
yeah,
And I think that is pretty very very admirable, because like you said, it's you have this idea in mind, which things are non-negotiable, and you're just trying to find different ways to kind of get those ideas and the components kind of made with what you have in mind. I think a lot of times that's what game designers, at any stage in their creation, kind of struggle with a lot of times, is kind of that certainty of like, this is what I want, and this is what I am okay with changing versus like not
yeah,
okay with changing. And so having kind of like this steadfast goal, I think, is really helpful to this kind of more unconventional method that you're going through, is because you're like, well, this is what I'm looking for, this is what I'm hoping to get, and so I'm just going to find all these different means and ways that those can be created, and not necessarily being like, getting a couple and being like, oh, well, they can't do it, so I guess I'll do something else.
yeah. Well, fortunately, I feel like I'm in good company talking to game designers because all of you know all about how to make things work when things aren't working. So um, I
Yeah, and
think
I
this
think
will
a
be a
lot of
very
people just like
understanding audience.
experimenting.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. So
yeah,
I think you guys will get it.
yeah, definitely. And I think we just have a lot of people who are really good problem solvers, and I've met a lot of game designers that just have a lot of different industries and kind of like specializations they come from, that
Oh
helps
yeah,
them tackle certain issues. I mean, Beau brings up his IT work, but it also helps with, I think we've talked about VR before, and the use of like building 3D, and
oh yeah,
just that kind of mindset and approaching certain components that way, I find is fascinating, and is again a different kind of take.
right.
um and we get a lot of I think people who are like coders, or do other software development and stuff, that tackle games in certain ways. And we also get a lot of artists, people who are more creative minded, that tackle games from a completely other kind of perspective.
Right.
And so it's really fun to get all those people together in a room or on a stream, and talk about game design, because
Yeah.
these different perspectives are really really great, and really fun with the problem solving. So yeah, thank you so much for those questions, Beezer Mist. Hopefully we answered all of them. If you have any follow-ups from this, from Justin's answers to those, feel free to post them in chat here. We are very excited. We're kind of actually coming towards, it looks like the kind of tail end of the stream, but we'll be on here for a little bit longer answering questions if you like. We already mentioned that you can play Biome Borneo and give it a run through on Tabletopia. But we actually have, that's right, we have Lackey in the chat here who works with us to kind of run tabletop games over at Emerald City Comic Con that's coming up. Do you know, will you be at Emerald City Comic Con,
You know it.
Justin and your team? All right, sweet. Sweet.
I'll see you guys there.
Yeah. Perfect. It sounds like we there's some table space for you at the showcase. And Lackey gave us a little bit of a nudge to check your email there. I think he
All
may
right.
have
Thank you, sir.
confirmed some times for you.
A subtle hint.
Amazing. Thank you. I will respond to that later.
Yeah,
Go
not
look now.
Take the opportunities. Yeah.
It was super subtle. It was totally super subtle, Lackey. We're good here. And I am at no shortage of table space either. So I've been telling people, I was like, if we have plenty of opportunities to play games during that those 4 days at Emerald City, December 2nd through 5th. Yep, December 2nd through 5th. It's another great way to kind of meet a bunch of local game designers. These conventions are actually a great way to get to meet people who are making games outside of the immediate Seattle area, like yourself. It's really great to get people kind of coming in. That's what I think one of the biggest things we missed about conventions is we play test with people. On Discord we've been able to play test with people in completely different states, on a weekly basis. And conventions gave us the opportunity for a couple times a year to meet with people in person to test their games. And it's been kind of starved for that for a bit, but we're excited because we'll be obviously playing your game at Emerald City. We have Quinn of, I think it's Strange Machine Games is the publisher. We play test games with him almost every Sunday on Discord. He's over in Oregon. We're going to be able to play test his games, and I think he has a couple of games in the showcase also. So it'll be great. We don't get to meet and see many of our Oregon family, for most of the year. So this is going to be an exciting convention for sure.
Yeah.
We're not used to it being in December. So make sure to, I don't know, bring an extra coat. I don't know if it'll get chilly. We'll we're in the basement, but it usually stays pretty well insulated.
Yeah.
And is really comfortable for gaming all weekend long.
Yeah.
Perfect. So let's see. All right. This is your last chance, chat, to get any other questions in. I think we've covered a wide variety of topics, and I think we'd be happy to have you back to go into further detail about the sourcing and maybe the other small businesses and stuff that you've worked with. That mycelium boards, I feel like are very. I just can't stop thinking about that. And how
I think it's a cool idea.
Yeah, because I mean, I know that when making cards and getting things printed in manufactured in China and stuff, they have to go through the process of like temperature controlled rooms and drying times and all this other stuff. And your mention of using a different material for that, it's like it somehow almost made me feel like, well, that's you're just looking at how to do different drying times or different controlled environments in order to make this material, the quality and kind of like the quality that's needed for the component and stuff. And so it really does kind of beg the question of like, well, why not? Why haven't we done this before? Why can't we start experimenting with this kind of stuff? I think the only other, and you mentioned it is really difficult, I think, just looking for a kind of like a domestic manufacturer in the US that does everything that you're kind of used to overseas. That is definitely something that's been kind of the the commonality that when people are realizing how expensive the manufacturing overseas has grown, the immediate reaction is to turn domestically and to look at different options. And like you said, they're just not used to a lot of the volumes, the materials, because we've been so used to as a company kind of exporting it or and outsourcing it overseas. Um, so I mean, I think it does mean that we are kind of ripe to build that network up again potentially. Like you said, since it sounds like a lot of these businesses have been having interested clients, asking for these kinds of materials and projects. So it's not that as far fetched as we think. Maybe on like a mass scale, but honestly, that if like you said, if people are specializing, if a lot of other things fall into place where it's focused here versus overseas, that there is potential there that that kind of industry could grow.
Yeah.
Which is very, very exciting. Well, is there let's see, any other shout outs that you would like to give for people who worked on your game, Biome Borneo, or if there are, gosh, other things that I had maybe missed about, this great journey and project that you're putting together?
Oh man, I'm sure there's always more, but I would just say probably Missy Ames, who we talked about. Shutter Sauce is a local company that helped us make some of our videos, and they did such a. The owner's name is Fareed, and he did such an amazing job. And so anyway, as far as he doesn't traditionally work in games, but if you see any of his work, he can really capture narrative and story super well. And I really do believe that this could be the year of the indie game. But we'll see if that's true. But I think people really do enjoy seeing a good story, and I think you will need like people who can tell a good story
Mm-hmm.
to be able to do
Yes.
that. And then just the countless number of people who have gone up to bat for us. Really, our influencers have gone above and beyond pulling for our game, and I have no logical reason in my head why they do that. But I just huge thank you to especially like our local ones, our ones that are just hop, skip, and whatever over in Tennessee. They've really been pulling super hard for us. And again, I don't pretend like we're anything really special. I mean, we're just a small team, but I think we really have a fantastic idea, and I think what drives us to push so hard. I mean, I was up till 3 a.m. and then I went to work every single day is because we're really passionate. We think we're onto something really good.
Yeah.
I would agree. Yeah. Based on everything that we had talked about this evening, there's a lot of great collaborations, a lot of great ideas, and like you said, kind of like values that are behind this great game. It is a great game, but there's all these other elements to it that make it kind of just an excellent game and project to support. All right, and let's see. So kind of yeah. Thank you for doing the last shout outs, the last kind of wrap up, and stating again kind of what makes the game, the team, this project so important. And we really hope this campaign is successful, so you can do many more biomes to come.
Yeah,
Thank you
totally.
guys so much.
Yeah,
Thank you for
you bet.
coming.
Perfect. All right. So I shared once again, this is probably the last time I'm going to be sharing it this evening. The Kickstarter campaign for Biome Borneo just launched today. Go ahead and give it a check. Check it out there. Support this game and campaign however you can. You can share with friends. Know that we talked a little bit earlier about some of the proceeds going of this project going to Project Borneo, which helps with the conservation effort in Borneo. Also, a really great game that you can play on Tabletopia. You can also play it at Emerald City Comic Con, happening December 2nd through 5th here in Seattle. And then we'll see what 2021 brings. I know Beezer Mist, who's in our chat here, is definitely going to be seeing us at OrcaCon, which is in January. So if timing aligns there, that's another, and that convention's in Bellevue, so maybe a little bit closer, not too much closer to you, but another great opportunity to showcase your game and the great people who made it. So yeah, once again, we have Justin here from the Biome Borneo. Goat, no, Goat Rocks. No, what is that? What is the game? What is I messed that up. What's the name of the
You know, you're
company
so
again?
close. It's just the plural, though. It's Goat Rock Games.
Goat Rock Games. There we are. It's their first. There we go. um, let's see.
Oh,
Beezermus, we don't know. Well, we don't know yet if Biome Borneo will be at OrcaCon. That's something that we can still, we can obviously talk to Justin about as far as planning goes. But we will see him at Emerald City.
yeah.
Perfect,
A
perfect.
biking Viking. Yeah, it looks like what looks to be a goat and a rock. No.
Goat and a
What?
rock. Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. Oh gosh, we got someone who came in right at the end. Welcome, Viking. We're actually about to sign off, but hopefully you
Yeah.
can see, hopefully you can see above there, Biome Borneo is
Thank
the
you for
game that we
signing
were
in.
talking about. Yeah, thank you for joining us at the tail end, but you can catch the recap also. Yes, thanks again for joining us, Justin, and for those viewing. You can find us at all of these events, whether in person or online at Discord for playtesting games, meeting local game designers, supporting indie games at Playtest Northwest, on Meetup, on Twitter, and that's kind of where you can find most of us. You can also find us in person. That on those events that are listed at Meetup. The next big one coming up is Emerald City Comic Con, December 2nd through 5th is our next convention, our last one of the year, actually. And we have a new event, playtesting event starting in Lake Stevens on Tuesday, November 23rd at 6 p.m. over at, let's see, it is Games Plus in Lake Stevens. So come on out to that, a new playtesting event to showcase your game. So once again, thank you all for joining us for this awesome chat session with Justin. And we'll see you next Tuesday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Bye.